Hello and welcome to the ACG Austin San Antonio chapter Executive Career Transition Roundtable. We started this program as a way to serve those who are C-level executives, vice presidents, and director level who might be facing some sort of a career transition, being able to provide them with both information to help them on the job search and also with networking in the Austin and San Antonio area. My name is Tom Singer, and I'm a director with the executive search firm Stanton. And today we are actually going to take a look at what do you need to know when it comes to the whole world of executive search. What is that about? How does it work? And just some tips in general to make yourself findable while you're looking for a job. And today we have with us the vice chairman for regions around the world of Stanton Chase, my boss, David Harap. Hey, David, thanks for joining us here today at the ACG Executive Career Transition Roundtable.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate the invitation, and I'm happy to help and be part of this great program.
Awesome. Well, before we get started, one of the things I want to do is I want to take a moment to thank the sponsors for the ACG Austin and San Antonio chapter. We couldn't put on all the great events that we put on throughout the year if it wasn't for the support of these sponsors. And those sponsors are Weaver, Insperity, Dykma, and Hire Better. All right, at this time, David, I'm going to turn it over to you for the next 15 minutes or so to share your wisdom and brilliance. Then we'll do a little Q&A, and then we'll have some networking.
Sounds great. And again, I appreciate the opportunity. I thought it might be helpful to start with a little bit of an overview on the different types of search firms and recruiters that are in the market, the different ways they specialize, and then how to work with recruiters, how to show up on their radar screens. When you look at the world of talent acquisition, there are pretty much three primary buckets. There's the executive search firms. Those are retained search firms that tend to work at the VP through C-level suite. And clients are the firms that are the hiring organizations. They retain the search firm to go find a very well-defined position. So, they're looking for a square peg for a square hole. And it's usually through original research and networking is how their research teams will identify and come up with the candidates. The other category are contingency firms. And I also group in that the job posting boards. And those are firms, they tend to work at the manager or individual contributor level. They tend to do higher volume roles, a lot of like engineers. And these are even roles that are very hard to find and very much in demand, but they tend to focus on that. The third category is in-house talent acquisition. A lot of large and fast-growing companies have recruiters in-house, and they do the same process of looking for candidates, assessing the candidates. It's just that they're employed by the hiring organization. There's, reasons why companies would use any one of those three, sometimes a hybrid of them, and they all have their role in the talent acquisition ecosystem. One's not better than the other, they're just different. How to show up on a recruiter's radars. One is through networking. Best way to do that is when you're starting a career search, and it could be either passive or proactive, talk to people you trust, colleagues, former colleagues. Ask them, have you worked with recruiters that you like, that have an expertise in my function or in my industry? And once you start to have a list of firms that really know what you do or what you aspire to do, then you can do a direct outreach to them. Many companies, they just accept the resumes through their website, and that's usually the best way to ensure you get into their database and you'll show up on their radar screens. If you email them and they don't reply, don't get offended. It's they're inundated with so many resumes, but it's their job to capture them and put them in the proper kind of database so that they'll be contacted as soon as there's a relevant search. but don't take it personally if you're not contacted. Stanton Chase, we probably in North America alone receive 1,000 unsolicited resumes a day. And so we just don't have the time to respond to every single one, but they're captured and they're put into our system. And most search firms handle it the exact same way. So always do the direct outreach, and also LinkedIn. My support team, they live on LinkedIn. And so having a kind of robust LinkedIn profile and staying active with LinkedIn, maybe it's posting interesting articles or, their algorithms, while it's a black box, they do value activity. And the more active you are, the more likely your profile will stay present within the audience that you want to see it. So stay active and keep it updated and keep it pretty robust. Now, it shouldn't be the exact duplicate of your actual resume, but you come 75% of the way there. Your actual resume, that's where you add some more of the specific accomplishments, not just what seat did you keep warm and what your title was, but what did you actually get done? What did you do to help your organization either move forward and grow, become more efficient, what have you? But that's in your resumes where you want to list actual accomplishments. But the online LinkedIn profile, make sure you address all of your responsibilities, all of your skill sets. That's also where, if you're in transition and you're taking classes to learn different skills, different programming skills, make sure that stays current in your LinkedIn profile. It's usually pretty automated, a lot of keyword searches. So you want to make sure all those keywords are front and center in your summary in the LinkedIn profile. And when you get the call from a recruiter, be responsive, be professional, and expect the same from the recruiter. Recruiters should treat you with respect and be responsive to, your communications. And so it should be that mutual respect. Yes, the recruiter is always going to be paid by the hiring organization, but it's got to be win-win. Most search firms guarantee that placement for a year. So it's in everyone's best interest that that is a long-standing, meaningful placement where it's win-win for the candidate to be excited about their career path and the hiring organization excited about the new talent on board. So I'll take a breath now. But I think that was kind of a 5,000-foot overview on recruiters, our role in the ecosystem, and how to work with us. But if there's some specific questions, happy to talk through.
So David, one of the questions that comes up a lot is about the LinkedIn profile. And I've talked to a lot of people who are like, does it really matter? From the standpoint of getting found by search firms, if they're looking for something absolutely specific, how important is it to have the keywords around what you do in your career? Because that's how you find many of the people who make your list, right?
Absolutely. So most search firms use the version of LinkedIn called LinkedIn Recruiter. And they'll do keywords if you're looking for a very specific skill set. And also, there's the ability to tag open to opportunities. Those will always show up on the top of the search results. So make sure you kind of click on that button, open to opportunities. That is the best way to ensure you're going to be on the first or second page, regardless of how many results come back. But yeah.
So David, I've only worked with you for 6 months, but you and I have been friends for 20 years. And I know that from working with you, that LinkedIn Recruiter is one of the major ways we identify people. But 25 years ago, there was no LinkedIn. There was no LinkedIn Recruiter. How has the search business changed for a recruiter? And how has that impacted the people who are actively looking for jobs? What are the changes that have happened in your 2+ decades that you've been doing this?
I'm embarrassed to admit it's actually now 3+ decades. But it's like so many other aspects of our lives. It's empowered the executive to help control their career path and being exposed to different opportunities. It used to be way back in the day when I first started in search, every firm had their own proprietary database. And you were able to go and brag to your potential client that you have 50,000 people in your proprietary database. Well, it's been, now it's a fairer democracy, and most folks, especially anyone who is even passively open to hearing about other opportunities, become active in LinkedIn, and that now has let them, the executive, help drive being exposed to different opportunities, not just waiting for a recruiter to call, but putting yourself out there in a highly professional way. You're exposed to a lot more opportunities than ever before, but it's kind of made it much more transparent than what used to be. Every firm would have their own little database, and you were very kind of kept it in close wraps because you didn't want anyone to know who you knew. But now it's much more transparent and open.
And you talked about sending resumes to recruiters, and I know that if we don't have a search, getting a resume, there's nothing we can do. And even if you have a search, getting a blind resume that's going to match that search doesn't matter. So why should people still? I want to go a little deeper. Why should they still reach out to recruiters when they know that it's sort of a needle in a haystack?
Because if it's relevant, in other words, if you've done your research and this is a recruiter or firm that does a lot of CFO searches, sending it, yes, you may not get a reply, but we just put them all in our database. And it's technology it takes us 2 clicks to put it in our database. And when we start a search, we will query our database. It's one of the first steps to look at who do we know that we should contact. So it's just, would you probably be contacted anyhow? That's what our research teams do, probably. But if you want to increase the probability that you're going to be called early in the search process, forward it to relevant recruiters.
So we'll open it up to questions from other people here in the audience, but I'll ask one more question while they're getting ready to pipe in with a couple of additional questions. The other thing is what are some of the biggest mistakes that you have seen people who are in transition, who are looking for a job? What are some of the mistakes they make?
Typos, either on your LinkedIn profile or your resume, having misspelling a word or a grammatical error. In this day and age, really just have some other eyes look at it. That is something that's hard to get past, quite honestly. The other is not being able to succinctly articulate what you do or what you want. All too often, people think, well, maybe I should be vague about what I want. This way it will increase my chances of getting the right opportunity. And it's just the opposite effect. You need to be able to have your own personal career elevator pitch down cold. And
Awesome.
the last item, I'll put 3 in there. Don't be defensive. A lot of times if people are in transition, you're always going to be asked, why did you make that change? Or why are you looking to make the change? Never be defensive. Just talk about it. Everyone has made changes in their career. No one expects someone to spend 30 years with a single organization anymore. Don't get defensive about it. Just talk about the facts, and it becomes a non-issue very quickly.
Awesome. At this time, is there anybody else who has any questions for David about sort of the world of making a career transition, how to get noticed, how to get seen, and how executive search operates? Garth.
Sure. With regards to your LinkedIn profile, where do the search terms come from? Is it from your entire profile? Do you need to add things like you're creating a website where you need to add tags someplace? Where do those search terms come in?
It's keywords on your LinkedIn profile. In other words, let's say I'm doing a search for someone in Austin in the computer hardware space who does business development. And, maybe I'll even list 4 or 5 companies that when those search results come, it will be highlighted the term business development throughout the person's profile. So it's a rather basic keyword search. And so that's why, especially if there's a unique skill set, repeat those keywords 3 to 4 times throughout your profile to increase the probability it's going to jump to the top of the line.
And do you have a kind of a list of top 100 keywords that you should make sure you include? Is there like a who's who of what those look like?
It's no, it's very much bespoke based on what your career path is and what direction you want to go. But I would probably keep a little bit of a closer attention to what are you aspiring to do? What does that next opportunity really look like in your mind? And then make sure there's keywords that align to that in your profile.
And David, those keywords can go in the summary, but they could also go in a paragraph that's like a description under your past jobs, right? So you actually have more than just the summary to talk about your skill sets, because you can go back through each job and add a paragraph, correct?
Absolutely. And you want it in your summary, but you'd love to have it embedded in 1 or 2 job descriptions throughout your profile. If it shows up 3+ times, guaranteed it'll be jumped to the top of the list within the search results. But
Jason, oh, go ahead, David.
I was just going to ramble for 30 seconds more. It's, you want to keep in mind what kind of roles are you looking for and aspire towards, and then make sure that's aligned with what experience you have. And if you make that clean link, it's easier for LinkedIn, it's easier for recruiters to be able to make that same connections. But sometimes you have to make it explicitly clear. Don't assume people will see the connection.
Jason, do you have a question?
Well, I think it's a good point to probably build off of Garth's LinkedIn question. So we think about the LinkedIn profile as a relatively static piece of content. What is kind of the process, and are recruiters seeing when you're having conversations, when you're posting, when you're doing different other elements of kind of building out the content that's out there that's leading to you? Or is this something that kind of they're not as much engaging in? It's more they really do like, hey, I'm going to do a search for XYZ.
So there's the activities, and it will always show the activity section of your LinkedIn profile. So if you're posting articles that are relevant to your function or industry, that helps keep top of mind. I mean, to be honest, recruiters do the exact same thing. So we stay top of mind with our clients and potential clients. So that activity level helps. And while it is somewhat stagnant, you want to maybe change the wording every 60 days of, a job description or responsibility you had, or update it, make sure you add your volunteer activities. There are ways to keep it engaged and keep it active. Just have to be a little thoughtful about that. So,
Donna, did you have any questions?
Thank you, Tom. Yes, I was going to add something to your earlier question when you said, what's a challenge that people in transition have? One of the things that we see a lot is candidates who have a tough time explaining a reason that they've left their last company or that they want to leave. And a lot of times people really overshare and over dramatize what's really important to them and the emotionality that they feel. But an important thing for candidates to remember is try to make it more neutral. And you can be truthful, but you don't have to put in all the drama. And it makes the candidate just seem just like they're not going to come with baggage to that potential employer. And it can make people really settle down. And all of that emotion is legitimate and the person can feel it. They just don't have to share it with the potential employer.
Good point.
So David, as we kind of wrap up this portion of the executive roundtable today, do you have any other little piece of advice? A lot of people will watch this on video and they very well might be in the midst of then transition. So they're out of work. They feel a little bit of urgency to be able to find a job. So do you have any tips for someone who's in sort of a more urgent situation?
Yeah, and it's a little more challenging these times because you'd sit there and say, well, let me go to networking events. Well, they're virtual now. And so you have to be a little more creative, but it's a matter of discipline, putting together a game plan of, okay, I'm going to reach out to 100 of my contacts this week, and then sticking to that game plan. So it's having a plan and then the discipline to stick to it that will show the best results. And it gives you a sense that you really are being active and working hard towards finding the next opportunity. So it's just have a plan and then stick to it. Don't just get frazzled by the uncertainty. Just have the plan, stick to it, and keep driving forward and work your networks, work your relationships. Everyone has worked with hundreds of people over their course of their career, even if you're young in your 30s. So leverage that network, reach out to people. People want to help, especially in Austin and San Antonio. We're pretty friendly folks, so people want to help. So this is the time to reach out and to talk and ask for assistance.
Awesome. Does anybody have any last questions for David before we let him go and move on to the networking portion? All right. Well, David Harap, the Vice Chairman for the Regions for Stanton Chase International, thank you so much for giving your time here to the ACG Austin and San Antonio chapter. Much like many of the virtual events that ACG does after we have the presentation, we like to move on to the networking. So the recording will end here so that we can have people chatting. But again, David, thank you. And if somebody wants to find out more about you or Stanton Chase, how do they find you?
Website is stantonchase.com. And it kind of should show up the Austin page right up front. So don't hesitate to reach out to us.
They'll find you and me on that page.
Absolutely.
All right. Again, David, thanks for being with us here today.